everybody. This is Tim Hart, branch manager of Van Dyke Mortgage right here in Fort Myers. Thanks for being with us today. I got an awesome guest with me on a very important event coming up here in Lee County and really across the state. And so luckily, I kind of know Dane Eagle, state rep, and he was cool enough to introduce me to Tommy Doyle, the supervisor of elections. He's with us today. Tommy, thanks for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
I really appreciate it because I know this has got to be your busy time of the year. You got to be slammed right now.
We are slammed doing all kinds of things besides getting ready for an election. We're testing the equipment. We're receiving our ballots back. We sent out almost 160,000 mail ballots, and they are coming back in droves. Probably after today, we'll have processed over 50,000 ballots that have been voted.
Now, is that more than the years past?
In 2016 was a record number. I can't tell you till election day if it's going to be more than 2016, but it's going to be very close.
Okay, all right.
This is going to be a huge return.
So you're expecting, especially for a midterm, you're expecting a huge turnout, right?
Yes. This my staff who has a lot of experience, and this feels like a presidential election year.
Oh wow, there you go. And I know we have to. By the way, guys, just so you know, what this interview is going to be about is all the amendments. Tommy, I've been seeing on my social media timeline, people I talk to, a lot of people, they get confused, by the wording of these amendments, and so I want to take some time for myself and then bring the knowledge out to, the listeners out there about the amendments and what's going on and make sure they vote the way they feel, so they're not confused, basically.
Well, I don't know if I can unconfuse them because I'm still confused. I can send them to areas where they can research it and find out some of the information. We've had, since our mail ballots went out, we've had several voters call complaining that why did I put these amendments on the ballot in that way? Of course, it's not the election, Lee County elections that did it. There's several ways those amendments got on the ballot.
How do these, because that's one thing when you read them, if you're not used to legalese and the wording, who writes these?
Well, there's 5 amendments that, there was 3 amendments put on by the legislature. That's 1, 2, and 5. So the legislative says whoever writes them for the legislator, they wrote those. And there's 2 amendments that were put on by Citizens Initiative. That's 3 and 4. And then the rest of them were put on, the last 7 were put on by the Constitutional Revision Commission, which is the only person or commission that can bundle in several different subjects. And they did that because they thought they were trying to not crowd the ballot. So they took 24 revisions and made it into 7.
Yeah, so we're going to touch on that too. I saw that coming up. And then for anyone out there watching, Tommy, do you want to explain about, all parties, all, independents, whoever, they're going to watch this, but you have to remain neutral in your position, nonpartisan, correct?
That's correct. And on our website at lee.vote, we have under election information, you can go to ballot measures. And under those ballot measures, we have links to institutions that talk about these amendments, give you pros and cons. What happens if you vote yes? What happens if you vote no? It's a good research for the voter to help them with their decisions.
Okay, so I'll put those links from your site. I'll throw them into the comment section or the body of this post if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or our podcast. So I'll make sure they get that. So Tommy, I came prepared for you, man. I got my sample ballot here. So I'm going to pull this thing out. And first, one of the first things I see is like how huge this sample ballot is. Is this normal?
No, it's not normal. This is probably the most amendments that statewide that's been on a ballot that I can remember. Normally, what that relates to, what you have there is a sample ballot, but what it relates to is 2 pages, 3 full sides, front and back, and some precincts will have the 4th side with a ballot measure on it, depending on, like Cape Coral has a referendum on there that will create a longer ballot.
Okay. And so before we get into these amendments, because I want to dig into a few of them, what advice would you give to the voters of Lee County, and if they're watching across the state, but mainly, I mean, we're Southwest Florida, so that's what we care about. No offense, rest of Florida, but it's true. What advice would you give them?
Well, first, we've been encouraging voters to request their vote by mail, and you still have time to do that. You can call our office and request it over the phone, and we send them out, and within 2 days, you'll have your ballot. This way, you can sit down, read these amendments, go over them, make a educated decision without being rushed. If you do not use the vote by mail, make sure that you research these amendments and all the races on there. Have them picked before you go into a polling place. And I would encourage, if you don't do vote by mail, use our early voting sites. And if you're hardcore and you want to do it on election day, that's fine too, but be prepared before you go in there. Take your sample ballot as your cheat sheet. You can print your specific ballot from our website. You can print that out and vote on it and bring it as a cheat sheet so you can mark the ballot in your privacy booth.
Okay, gotcha. And so for me personally, and this is just me, that it annoys me that people do it, is would you advise, like, if you don't know anything about a certain race, like the hospital board or judges or something like that, just leave it blank, right? Or what do you think?
I would advise that. My advice is to go research these candidates. They all have websites. You can go on and find their websites on the candidate list on our website. You can look at them and decide who you want to vote for. But if you have no idea, leave it blank.
Thank you. I just see it like there's someone's like, oh, he had a funny name, and they vote for him. You're like, dude, yeah. Like you know nothing about that person.
Yeah,
so.
And some people think that if you leave a race off, that the whole ballot is disqualified, but no, it's not. We call that undervotes, and what you vote on will be counted.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So leave it blank if you don't know. Nothing wrong with that. So let's go ahead and get into these amendments if you don't mind. I'm gonna, I got like I said, my big ballot out. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't see it, but it's massive. So I'm going to kind of just tee them up and then, maybe dig deeper on one or two, especially ones that are the hot button ones or that are really confusing to people. If you don't mind, that would make it a little easier. So you ready?
Sure.
All right. Amendment 1, increase homestead exemption, property tax exemption.
I think that's a pretty simple one. That was put on by the legislators to increase your exemption on your property. If you read the ballot language or the summary, it's a little confusing. Basically, it gives you another $25,000 exemption on your property tax, where now you have 25. It'll make it a $50,000 exemption depending on the value of your home.
Okay, gotcha. Amendment 2, it says limitations on property tax assessments.
So this is for non-residential property. And this is already in the language. It's getting ready to expire. It's in the I don't know if it's part as temporary amendment, but this just extends that amendment to make it permanent, and it caps non-residential property 10% a year increase in value. That's for people who own homes that aren't their residents. They live up north or investment property. You can't increase that value by 10% a year. Anymore.
Is that for commercial as well, or just?
I think it is for commercial as well.
But that's already existing. This is just to make it permanent.
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, for these to pass, it's 60%, right?
That's correct.
for constitutional amendments.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's new for this election. Well, I shouldn't say for this election. Since 20 years ago, when the Constitution Revision Commission met and put 8 ballot measures on, it was only majority. But since then, now it's a supermajority.
Okay, got it. Number 3, voter control of gambling in Florida. This is very interesting to me.
This is complicated. It sounds simple, but I think when you're researching these, and the way it talks is voter controls if you want casino gambling in the state of Florida. I think you have to look at who's funding the advertising of this amendment. There's a bunch of advertising going out that passed this amendment, and look behind who's advertising those before you make your decision, yes or no. It also, it's one of those ballots. It's complicated, and without reading the entire measure, you may not know exactly what's going on. And on our website, you can see the entire ballot measure or ballot language. We have on our website. You can look that up too. These are just summaries that's on the ballot, but there you can read the whole measure from our proposed constitutional amendment book.
So, but it seems if you vote yes, you're saying that you want voters to control in state of Florida, not even just countywide, right? It would be the state. Correct. Florida state voters would have to control it.
That's how I read it. I've also heard it also could be more localized than that. So if you like a county by county, like a home rule type of thing. So,
but it does. So you've heard it. See, that's what gets so confusing for people.
Yeah, I know. Now you got to remember, this ballot measure was put on by a citizens initiative, which it took 800,000 signatures to get this on the ballot. So it's got a lot of support already.
Okay, and that would be probably for support of voters being in control, I would imagine.
Right. That sounds really good, but like I said, go back and see who's pushing this amendment to be passed.
Okay. Always follow the money. Is that what you're saying, Tommy?
Follow the money.
All right, I got you. Okay, so this seems to be another hot button one, and that's the voter number 4, voter registration amendment.
Yeah, what this does, this is another one got on by a citizens initiative where it required nearly 800,000 signatures to get this measure on the ballot, and it would restore. They're saying statistically 1.5 million felons would restore their voting rights, and there's exceptions to who can get those voting rights. Depending on the level of the crime, like murder, first-degree murderers and sexual offenders may not be able to get restoration back.
Yeah, and so what was the number again? How many?
1.5 million.
1.5. So this is in the state of Florida.
Yes.
And they're felons, but not murder or sexual offenses, or someone banned by the governor, right?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
We already. The problem is we do have a process, clemency process that felons go through now that they can apply for, but there's people pushing for a faster remedy to get these felons after they serve their time and their parole, they can get their voting rights back.
So if you're a felon and you serve your time, do your parole, right? Currently, how long should it on average take me to get my voting rights restored?
5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years.
5 years after you're finished, you can apply for clemency, and then it takes a while to get in front of the clemency board. But I've heard minimum 5, as much as 10.
Okay, and then this measure would basically make it, hey, you finished, you're good, you can vote.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Then number 5, the constitutional amendment, supermajority vote required to impose, authorize, or raise state taxes or fees. This is for the legislator, right? Not the voters?
No, this was put on by the Florida legislature. So what this does, if the legislator, Florida Congress wants to raise a tax, then that means you're going to have a supermajority to pass that. If it comes on the ballot, it'll take a supermajority to pass that. You got to remember this Florida legislature is a highly on the conservative side. So they're looking at the next 20 years. They want to make it hard to raise taxes in the state of Florida. So because they don't know, they're trying to protect that process in case we change our status and go to the liberal side instead of the conservative side.
Huh. Interesting. I kind of read it though as that it was you needed a supermajority in the House and it wasn't a voting measure.
I think you're correct. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you're correct about that. Yeah, that's to make the House a supermajority, not voters. Yeah.
Got it.
So we can decide if you want to make it harder to raise taxes by our Florida legislature.
Correct. I got you. All right. I'm going to do my best, by the way, not to give away what I'm going to vote for as we're doing this. So, all right. So then this one, we're getting into the concept. Are there any on the amendments that you want to hit? Because we're going to roll into the revisions here.
We're getting ready to go into the 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Right.
Put on by the Constitution Revision Commission. This commission meets every 20 years. We're the only state in Florida that has such a commission. There's 37 members, and they're appointed. There's some appointed by the governor, by the legislature, by the Senate. One is appointed by a Supreme Court justice, and the other one is the Attorney General, who's an automatic appointment. And they've taken proposals for a year, and they come up and they whittle them down to these, I guess, 7 revisions, because these revisions affect, some are new amendments, some affect different articles in the Constitution. One revision can affect up to 2 to 3 articles and maybe up to some different sections in that article. So it's very complicated.
So let's dive a little deep, just real quick on that commission. So you said they meet every 20 years?
Yes.
So
this is the 3rd time they've met.
And we're the only state that does this?
Yes.
Okay. And then before we get into these, you might just explain why they bunch them together like this.
Well, they came out with, I think at the end of the commission voted to put accepted 23 proposals. These 23 proposals went into a committee called the Styles and Drafting Committee. And in order to keep the length of our ballot down, they bundled these together. They're the legislature, the Citizens Initiative can't bundle them. They got to be standalone. And they bundled these 23 into 7 amendments. 2 of these 7 are standalone amendments. The last 2, 12 and 13, are standalone, and the others are bundled.
Okay. Well,
and you see that number 8 is missing. Number 8 was thrown off the ballot by the Circuit Court of Tallahassee, and it was appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, and they agreed with the Circuit Court, and it was thrown off because of the convoluted nature of the bundling.
What was that one?
That was number 8. That was school board term limits and duties and public schools. It creates a term limit of 8 consecutive years for school board members and requires the legislature to provide for the promotion of a civic literacy in public schools. Currently, district school boards have constitutional duty to operate, control, and supervise all public schools. The amendment also maintains a school board duties to public schools. It establishes but permits the state to operate, control, and supervise public schools not established by the school board. I'm assuming that's charter schools.
Okay. Yeah.
There's 3 measures in that one revision.
Right.
Yeah.
My brain just melted as you were reading that.
I know.
So, all right, let's get rolling on these then. We got the number 6, right? Rights of crime victims. And then it's weird. It just throws judges like right in the middle of that.
Yeah, well, the judges, is 2 measures on the judges. The judges, it raised the mandatory retirement age to 75, which is not a problem. And it also it deletes authorization to complete a judicial term if one half the term has been served by a retirement judge. So if he retires during the term, I think that means he can serve out his term. We have 3 Supreme Court justices who were on the ballot, were supposed to be on the ballot for merit retention. 3 of those reached retirement age. So you only see 1 Supreme Court justice on the ballot. The new governor will appoint 3 new justices.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
Yes. Then it also requires judges to interpret statutes on his own instead of reaching out to independent government agencies. And then the big one is it creates a constitutional right for victims of crimes. We also have a right of people who commit crimes to a speedy trial. But what this does, it gives the right to the victim to get that trial moved through. And this is based on a law called Marcy's Law, and you have examples where people who are sexually offended in grade school or high school, and they're out of college before this thing goes to trial. So I think the idea was to give the victims the chance to get this pushed through so they can get on with their life.
That's what that says?
I think that's basically what it is.
Huh. Okay. I'm down with that. After I just told you I wouldn't give away what I was going to vote for. Okay, well, number 7.
Yeah, number 7.
Yep.
Number 7. Yeah, that has several. That has 3. It's got first responders, military member survivor benefits, and public colleges and universities, 2 subjects that aren't even related. So if you read it.
And Tommy, let's just stop real quick and remind everyone out there that's watching this, Tommy doesn't control these amendments. Lee County doesn't, right? I mean, this is straight from the state initiative. So we can laugh together at this, Tommy.
That's correct. And I have been going around and talking about the midterm elections to a lot of organizations. And I skipped through this pretty quickly because it's very, I hand out the booklets so that people can research it. And I keep telling them, make sure you have your decisions made before you go in that polling booth. Otherwise, you're going to be, if you have never read any of these, you're not going to know what they're talking about.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, then do your normal thing and let's just cruise through some of these. But the county school board one I want to make sure we hit on, and then the dog racing one at the end. So let's move on to number 9, though, because that one looks very interesting, with prohibits offshore oil and gas drilling.
Yeah, this is
and then vaping's in the way for some reason.
Yeah, this is a funny one. Now, this creates a whole new amendment, prohibits on the offshore oil and gas drilling. However, the prohibits vaping, it is added to the tobacco amendment where tobacco is not allowed to be smoked in indoor spaces. So that's what that does. It's simple, but a lot of people are complaining they don't want to have to vote for one. And, some people aren't against vaping in enclosed indoor workspaces. And some people are. Some people aren't against prohibiting offshore oil and gas drilling, and they have their reasons why. So this is why these amendments are confusing, because if you vote on one, yes, you passed them all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, buying that. There's that one thing in the sampler pack that you really, really like, and you got to buy it, and then you got to throw out the other stuff. But,
Exactly.
but currently we can't drill offshore in Florida, right?
No.
So if this passes, we can't.
This will prohibit any offshore oil and gas drilling.
Oh, prohibit. I'm sorry. Okay.
In state waters. You might know it's, that's 3 miles out, which is not far.
Okay. Gotcha. So it prohibits it. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 10, state and local government structure. You can touch on 10, 11, and 12, however you like. Okay.
Okay. Well, I think there's several things in this one, but the one thing that stands out is that it ensures the election of sheriff, property appraisers, supervisor of elections, tax collector, and clerk of the court. And what this amendment, if it passes, all of these constitutional officers will have to be elected. We have some counties that appoint their sheriff, appoint their supervisor of elections, appoint the clerk of the court. This will make them counties have an election for all the constitutional offices. And what the proponents are saying that this will be take away any corruption, because if you have a county commission appointing a sheriff, and this county commissioner possibly did something wrong, now his buddy is the sheriff, so it might lead to some corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to eliminate that with this amendment. The rest of it is requires legislators to retain the Department of Veteran Affairs. Well, we already have one, so it just retains it. It changes the legislative session to commence in a date on an even numbered years from March to January. And it removes the legislature's authorization to fix another date. And it creates the Office of Domestic Security and Counterterrorism within the Department of Law Enforcement, which I think we already have that in this state. So I think it's a little redundant, but you decide.
Gotcha. All right. Number 11.
Number 11 is this has to do with property rights owned by aliens, the foreigners. And I think it removes some obsolete provisions, and it also deals with criminal statutes. So you got 3 measures in there. It removes discriminatory language related to real property rights, and that has to do with aliens owning property. So I think it changes that language where they're allowed to own property in the state of Florida. Deletes provision that amendment of criminal statute will not affect prosecution or penalties for a crime committed before the amendment. So what happens if this amendment passes or any law passes saying this crime is no longer a crime, but if you were charged with that crime before this amendment, you could still be taken to court and charged with that crime. And I think that's about all I can tell you about that measure.
Okay. What about number 12? Lobbying and abuse of office by public officers.
Yeah, this is one of the standalone amendments that was put on by the Constitutional Revision Commission. And this amendment just increases the time that a public official or somebody working in the government can work as a lobbyist in Tallahassee, lobbying the legislature. I think it increases that time to 6 years.
6 years from the point where they retire or get voted out?
Yes.
Okay. What is it? It's currently, I'm sorry, it increases?
I'm not sure. I think it's 3 years now.
Okay, so 3 to 6 probably.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But
all right. Now the next one, number 13, ends dog racing.
And that's Amendment 13. And that's a standalone amendment that would end dog racing, any parimutuel betting on dogs.
Like the Naples Greyhound dog track would be.
Yes, right. And
right.
I think one of the, this was trying to be thrown off, was taken to court to be thrown off. And the people behind that was the Greyhound, I forget what their club name is, but people who support greyhounds. They
like
want
to rescue greyhounds and all that.
Yeah, they wanted to keep that dog racing in because they're afraid that it will end that breed if they can't race them.
So the Greyhound Rescue place wants racing to continue so the breed can stay going on.
That's what I think. I don't, that's what you need to research that, see who's behind that.
I almost got you on one, Tommy. I almost got you to commit to one right there.
Yeah. The one caveat I want to add, one caveat I want to add is that
it's all right.
That Amendment 7, 9, and 11. They were thrown off the ballot by the circuit court in Tallahassee after the ballot was printed. These measures are on the ballot. That is appealed into the Florida Supreme Court, who will be hearing those measures probably in the next week or so. There's a likelihood that those measures won't even count when you vote on them.
7, 9, and 11?
Yes.
Huh.
And once again, it's because of I think the number 10. I'm sorry, number 10 is 1. It's 7, 9, and 10. And that one there was because of the constitutional offices. The counties that appoint them want to keep that home rule. They don't want to give that up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on number 9, though, I mean, I get it. It's like you want to prohibit offshore oil and gas, but at the same time, you're asking me to make a choice about vaping.
Right.
Like one is a little more important to most people than the other. Like offshore drilling is a little more important to people than vaping, you know? Yeah. So,
yeah, and I understand the voters' concerns because they don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. Okay. So then that's number 13. And so then the county school board referendum, this is the other pretty hot button issue out there. And that's the 1/2 cent sales tax?
Create a 1/2 cent sales tax on your, instead of 6%, we're going to be 6.5%, and 1/2 cent goes towards, I think, infrastructure mostly for the school boards.
But this is only our county, right?
That's only our county, yes.
So, but does our county have the ability to increase sales taxes and collect it?
They do.
Because you got to collect it from the state, right?
Correct, but they have the ability to pass a sales tax and earmark that sales tax for certain purposes. This also is a sunshine into this. In 10 years, this tax will go away if it's not continued after 10 years.
Okay, I got you. Cool.
It's for a specific item.
Right. I got you. All right. Well, that covered all the amendments out there. Do you have anything you want to add, Tommy?
Yeah, I still think you should request your vote by mail today. And once you get it back, send it back as soon as you can, because you need to send that back at least 10 days before the election. So make sure it gets here before 7 o'clock on election day to be counted.
Okay.
If you get a vote by mail ballot, it doesn't mean you have to use that ballot. You can still go to the polls, but do not bring that ballot with you. You can't bring that as a cheat sheet.
No. All right. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else?
That's all I got. All I have about the amendments. I know it wasn't a whole lot of help, except to make it more confusing than it already is.
Well, no, I think you shed some light on a lot of it, and also I think it's important for people to kind of get that Lee County's not in charge of these things. Right. The wording comes from the state and other initiatives, like you said. So we'll put all those links from your website that you recommended. We'll put them in the body of this post so people will have them. Okay.
That'd be great, because that'll really help them out.
Oh, cool. Tommy, I appreciate the the words and the time. I know you're a busy guy, man, so it means a lot to me. So thank you, and I hope everyone out there enjoys it. And Tommy, we'll look forward to having a smooth election. And by the way, shout out to you after what was it? What election was it that was like 12? You took over after that, right?
Yes, 2016. I was elected in 2016 and started officially in January of 2017.
Nice turnaround, buddy, because that was insane. So good job to you. So
that's why I'm encouraging vote by mail and get out there and early vote, and we won't have that problem.
There you go. All right, you guys, that was Tommy Doyle, Supervisor of Lee County Elections. Tommy, once again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. And so you guys out there for watching, thank you very much. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Facebook, YouTube, share this with someone you know. I know there's someone on your Facebook, your timeline, Twitter, wherever that's questioning these amendments. Send them this video. Let them check it out. Listen to Tommy jam. So, guys, thanks again. Appreciate it. You guys take care. Bye-bye.